right, hello. Seeing how it goes here. Okay, I think it's working. I don't think anybody's here yet, or maybe here period, which is fine. Ooh, I need to figure this out. Moment. Okay. So I'm Brianna, and I am going to be talking a lot about Learning Lab, building a Learning Lab course right now, and I figured it might be a nice idea to kind of do it as a live stream in case anybody else is wanting to write a Learning Lab course, then they might know how to do it. Okay, so what to write a Learning Lab course on? Let's back up. What is Learning Lab, in case that's where we're at? In that case, this is Learning Lab. Lab.github.com. I'm on the team that works on Learning Lab, and it's a way to learn things on GitHub. Naturally, I was a GitHub trainer, so things that I teach are Git and GitHub related, at least have been historically. So that's what a lot of the content on Learning Lab is right now, but that doesn't mean that's how it has to be forever. And yeah, trying to get more courses out there, and including ones that you can build, right? Just because you can take a course and you can build a course. Anyway, so that's Learning Lab. Let's figure out what to build. So here are some ideas that I was thinking about so far. So using projects like project boards. What I like about this option is when I'm building a Learning Lab course, there are things I can respond to, like Learning Lab can listen for, and then Learning Lab can respond in a certain way, and all of those are pretty much GitHub API related. So topics that are going to naturally do things or be things that trigger webhook events, that is going to be favorable. So for example, if I wanted to build a course on, Lady Gaga, like that could happen. But I would need to get super creative on how am I going to know that somebody has learned what I want them to learn about Lady Gaga, right? Like I can't, maybe I could have them commit all of the lyrics to her song, I don't know. I could have them type in the name of their favorite song of hers, and I could validate if that is really a Lady Gaga song. But, it can be done, but you need to be a little bit more creative. Whereas topics like using projects or things that are native to GitHub are just going to be a little bit easier to figure out. Like, if I want to teach somebody how to use a project board, I can tell if they're doing that if they use the project board. So I can immediately validate that. I don't need them to type anything out and then validate their response. It's just very behavior-based stuff, which is really ideal. So using projects is one idea. How to set up a one-on-one repository. So many people know that GitHub is a majority remote company. So everyone on my team lives all over the place. I live in Berlin. My manager lives in North Carolina, and we keep notes for our one-on-one meetings in a repository. So this is a way that we can do things on GitHub and also show some maybe non-traditional use cases for GitHub repositories. So that's an option. How to build an action. So we do have one course, as you could see here. Hello, GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions is so cool. But the thing about building more courses is twofold. One, I know our team is working on it soon. Don't want to, I know it's going to happen whether or not I work on it right now. On the other hand, it's something I don't already know. So it would take a lot longer to put together, which is fine. Working with releases similarly to projects. It's GitHub stuff. I might wait on releases because there's some cool, I think it would be fun to combine releases and actions. GitHub flow practice, that would just be a really easy one. Do something hard with Git. This could be fun because I know a lot of rebasing or Git filter branch or anything like that. That could be fun. Write a limerick. This is just an example of something not GitHub related. So if for example, if you are an educator or a trainer or something, whatever you're trying to teach somebody something, it doesn't have to be just GitHub. Even though that can be helpful in terms of what the events are that Learning Lab will listen for, you could do it, lots of different ways and be really creative. GitHub Pages. Docsify is something I've used a lot in the past to build kind of training manuals on GitHub Pages. You can make slides on GitHub Pages out of Markdown. These are really practical things that would teach something new and specific, but still the same technologies that I'm already super comfortable with. How to organize issues, how to work with protected branches, how to trace history in an older repository. I think this could be interesting too. So I think it's an important skill, right? If you join a team and you need to find something out, right? Where did this happen? Why did this happen? Repository might already have a ton of history, so a ton of commits, a ton of issues that are closed and stale and old and new. Same with pull requests. And it can be really useful to go and find those things. So thinking a lot about searching, about git blame, that type of stuff, but also kind of connecting the dots theoretically, like, oh wow, GitHub does keep track of everything, and just because you delete a branch doesn't mean it's gone, and yada yada yada. Stuff that as a trainer I know really well, but new people to Git and GitHub probably don't know that so well. So this is what I'm thinking about right now. I'm gonna go ahead and rule out some of these just quick. So like Limerick, not gonna happen. GitHub flow practice, probably not gonna happen. I think that would be just like a little bit of a cop out for me. That'd be too easy. I want a challenge. Today, you can see I'm writing in Markdown because that's the only language I speak anymore. These I think we could combine, so like an action and release, because if you're gonna build an action, the action has to do something. And it could be a release. And you could also talk about working with releases. The one that I'm most excited about is the tracing history in an older repository. That also has some interesting challenges that we'll get into. So let's go forward with this one. Tracing history in an older repository. Not today, includes all these other really great ideas. So good. Okay. So let's do it. Whenever I start building a Learning Lab course, so there's a lot of different ways to start. So in Learning Lab, if you're logged in, you can click the little button here, plus, and create a course. You can also have a course repository. Before I get into the details of that, it's really helpful for me to think about, just like to take it back a step. Think about what exactly am I trying to teach? What is that going to look like? So I'm going to do tracing history in an older repository. And the way that I think about this is, so there's something set up. So I'll call this like step 0, right? So this will also help translate to the config as we actually build this out with logic. This is just my process. Everybody has a different process. So step 0, like what is the exposition, right? Like I think of the, this is then super, in case this couldn't get nerdier, operas, the overture happens before like the opera starts, but it has little bits of all the arias in it. This is like, okay, setting the scene so everybody knows what's coming. Okay, anyway. There needs to be many issues and PRs, old and new. Longer history in the repository from different authors and branches, which introduces such an interesting challenge. Because if you've taken any Learning Lab courses, you'll probably notice that the histories are pretty short, and like the content in terms of issues and pull requests, what you see is really minimal, because we don't want to distract the learner with stuff that doesn't have to do with what they're learning. But in this case, if what they're learning is how to traverse old or very active repository, then we are going to need some of that noise. So that'll be fun. So issues and pull requests, old and new, longer history from different authors and branches. The project, this is something my colleague Hector is really good at that I'm not so good at, is by the end of this, the learner should have something like cool, like something fun. Like could you have a memory game with Octocats, or I don't know, a resume? in my mind, I don't really care so much about what that is right now, but we do want it to work really organically with these learning objectives. So or with this kind of the setup. GitHub Pages is a really easy win because you can be like, oh, just turn on GitHub Pages and there you go. So I need to think about that. I think it would be cool if the end project, so the whole purpose of going through an older repository could be for an audit, it could be for trying to understand why a decision was made. It's hard to kind of turn that into a project. I'm going to leave that TBD. Don't need to decide right now. Okay, what would be the first thing or some behaviors that I would want the learner to do, that I want to teach them? So if you're really good at tracing history in an older repository, then you can probably search issues and pull requests for different specs, so like author, title, contains, whatever. Find authors of specific historic commits. Find the reason why a commit was made. So really just find commit context. Why was it made? When was it made? Who approved it? What tests were run? So thinking about, from an audit perspective, a lot of customers I've worked with need to know, okay, Git keeps the history, but how do we know that this is useful history? And GitHub keeps all of that, all of this context, everything is there, and we need to, the purpose of this, I want to teach people how to find that, not so much because they're going to do it every day, more so because, also it's not hard, but if people don't know that it's possible, then they'll never do it. So this is really just to show what's possible and to show how much everything is interconnected. Maybe even the same stuff is there, but from a release. So that release just got promoted into production and there was an error, we need to roll back. We probably won't cover that here. But what happened in that release that could be the problem? Let's find out about that release specifically. So these are the main things that I want users to find. I'm trying to think about, so let me dig up so I'm going to go to actually lab.github.com. The docs are fabulous, and I'm looking for the possible event triggers. So I know these are the general behaviors that I want the user to complete. I'm going to be like, hey, do this, and they're going to do it, and somehow I'm going to validate that they did it. One of my favorite lessons, I used to teach elementary school music. One of my teachers, actually several, the thing they really drilled into our heads was teaching is not easy, but it's simple. 3 parts. You tell them what to do, they do it while you watch them do it, and then you tell them if they did it or not, right? So teaching piano, that would mean I'd be like, hey, play a C major chord. And they would play something, I would observe, and I'd be like, you did it. Or I'd be like, oh, you did not do it, and here's specifically what you need to do differently. That quick feedback cycle is really everything. And so I'm gonna look for the events, what can I observe as Learning Lab in those events that aligns with these behaviors that I think are important to this concept. Let's dig in. Also, I see there's at least a couple people watching, hi mom, probably. So you should say hi in chat because I probably know all of you and I appreciate you. Okay, the docs. So, homepage, it's welcome. We're so glad you're here. Thanks, Learning Lab. I'm glad that I'm here too. Quick start, a tidy checklist, that sounds nice. That sounds like a good idea. Available actions. So quick reference to actions and their parameters. This vocabulary is a little bit confusing because of GitHub Actions, and those are now kind of a different thing than these Learning Lab actions. Hi, Hector. Hector, you're also a moderator on this, which is fancy. So this available actions here does not mean GitHub Actions. That means available bot superpowers. So if the user does X, what are the things the bot can do in response? Those are available actions. Learning Lab for Enterprise, cool, but does not apply to me right now. So I'm going to go to the quick start on building courses. Let's see if that tells me what I need. So Course Builder, this I'm going to use. I actually haven't used the Course Builder yet, and I'm really excited to. Plan your course, build your course, test your course, publish your. Okay, that is a nice quick start guide. I think it's in the appendix. Let's find out. Response best practice, sample, Let's see. Planning, events as triggers. So this is what I want to look for. It's not the first thing that comes up, like in the kind of quick start guide, but for my brain, this is what I work with first. It's really just like, what are these behaviors? How can I link that to an event? And then I fill in the rest of it, right? It's filling in the, how does that event match that behavior, then telling the user to do it, basically. Okay, so the events are all matched very directly from the event types and payloads on GitHub. I cannot do this. I'm so sorry. I hope this doesn't bother anybody. Usually I keep this little dark reader thing on. I tried to turn it off to make my screen look normal, but I can't handle it. Okay. Make this bigger. So these are the events. So we're not going to go into detail on every single one of these right now. I see, Hector, you're a moderator. I don't know why either. I went and looked, and I don't even remember putting it in there, so it must be from a long time ago. But I'm glad that you are. You can keep all these, hundreds of hooligans that are watching right now, all these 100,000 people, just keep them in line. So any of these things also have other sub things. So example, issues event. If I click that, that means an issue being opened, edited, deleted, transferred. These are not an event that is like, I can tell that you just searched. That's not a thing. So we're going to need to stretch that out a little bit. I'll have them search for something, and then it'll have to be more of a purpose to that. So it'll have to search for this, and then post, relevant results somehow. Meaning maybe they post it as a comment, maybe they cross-link. That would actually be super useful. So something that happens really frequently, at least to me, is it's like, oh, there's a new thread, there's a new issue about something. And maybe it is about, we'll say it's about a Learning Lab live stream. So there's a new issue, and somebody who maybe has not been on the team for very long opens this issue and is like, hey, I have this brand new idea. We need to start from scratch. And meanwhile, I'm like, I actually think that idea existed before a little bit. I'm going to go find that other issue or find that other pull request and then cross-link it in your issue so you have more context. This happens all the time. So I envision this looking like an issue or pull request that the bot opens, and then we say, there's another issue that relates to this, and there'll be a bunch of issues open, and then the user will need to go search, and they can do that in several ways, and then they will comment. They can say just the issue, but we should have them not do that. We should have them cross-link with a complete sentence, because it's really the purpose of this behavior. Some context. Okay. So I'm going to be looking for an issue comment, if that's what I decide to go with. So the first thing, bot would, again, this is how I kind of put things together. We'll see how this can switch into a config over time. Or even here, I'll go instruction. In an existing issue that has a related issue or pull request buried somewhere, please find the related issue and cross-link with a short description. So that would be the instruction. Instead, that would be the first thing. it'll get changed, but that's how it is now. And then the user, so I'm going to call this the event. Or let's actually do this. Let's call this step 1. We'll call this the description, because this is describing what happens. I'm going to save this as markdown so that it makes sense. I'll call it bare config for no specific reason. Okay. I love this markdown linter. I love it, right? Okay, so this is the description, and the event that I would be looking for is an issue comment. So I'm going to go back here, issue comment event. Then it looks like this, just issue comment. That's the webhook event name. So that's all I'm going to do for now. Just throw that in there. There's going to be some more details. I'm going to want to validate that the comment references the correct issue. I'm going to then want to also validate it has some kind of description. That's going to be really hard. We'll come back to the details of that. Just because does the description just constitute any characters? We're kind of stuck with regex here, regex. So that kind of limits our options a little bit, but we can be creative. So they comment, and I'm like, great, you cross-linked it. Very cool. Very nice. Hi, Glenn. Oh no, it sounds like I'm in a tunnel. Thank you for letting me know. So hopefully if it doesn't get better, let me take a look at my stream quality. It says it's not great. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just taking a peek at the history of the stream thing. Okay, so it looks like that was maybe a couple minutes ago, but it might be better now. Let me know if it's still going bad, and I'll try and fix it. So I want to validate that it, is correct. I'm, in the real world, if this were to happen, I would include a description and also maybe @mention some people so that I found. So if I go back and look at the initial issue and see, oh, Carol really spearheaded this, I might want to also @mention Carol. That would be a good thing to teach. Could be hard because we would either want that to be, we want that to not be a real person on GitHub because they will get inundated with notifications, and that's not great. So let's leave that out for now. Okay, so that is a good cross-linking thing. I'm just going to add to a behavior that it would be good if they could find something through cross-links. So for example, when this thing happens, if the user posts the link in issue number 242, right, and they are linking to issue 15, 15 will also get a link to 242 automatically. So a cross-link is created on the other side of that. And it might make sense to actually start there before creating a link. So I'm going to call this step 2. I'm going to put this instruction as a part of step 1. Instruction for step 2. And here the instruction for step 1, we'll bring this context here. Actually, no, that's wrong. So the instruction for step 1 would be to find the issue that is cross-linked, cross-linked automatically from the instruction issue, and then they would need to do something. So I'm imagining it being the bot opens an issue and it says, and there's a cross-link to another one that's like, hey, this other issue referenced this bot's issue. And the instruction is, hey, can you go find that related issue and ... That needs to be an event. But what event makes sense? So maybe they could close it. That makes sense, I think. I am a little nervous to be like, close the issue or comment on an issue, because those are really easy. I don't want to get stuck in a pattern of always having the user do the same thing, right? I want what the user is doing to actually reflect whatever the skill is. So I just heads up, I'm going to be aware of that as I go on. But I think in this case it makes sense. Because if it's cross-linked, and they will close it because it's because it is, we don't need multiple threads with the same things. And maybe there's some information to bring over, like something that the issue we should close has, this new one doesn't, it could bring that over. We'll get there. So then the step 1 description would be close the linked issue. Yeah, let's start with that only, because that is an event trigger, and then bringing something over is a separate event trigger. And let's keep it little chunks, just because it's way easier for people to follow along. I find that if I'm writing a course and it's like I'm asking the user to do way too many things, like a lot of things in each step, then there is probably a way to simplify and like hone in on what I'm actually trying to see them do, or teach them, and maybe there's some other things that we could pull away. So description here, the event, oops, click on the wrong screen. Here would be issue, I think it's issue closed, but let me just check. Nope. Go all the way to the top. It's probably just an issue event. Issues event. Hector, if you know this off the top of your head, you will get sparkles. Issues event. Issue, I think there's also a way to like issue.closed. So I'm gonna take a look at the docs real quick. This is what the config is going to look like. It's not exactly what I'm working on right now, but I'm hoping that it'll be easy to translate. So event, yeah, here we go. Issues.closed is the example here. So I personally find a lot of value in looking at examples. It helps me understand. It's all good, Hector. I'm just trying to remember the event, off the top of my head. But it's a good practice to go look for it. Even though the whole config file isn't going to be done right now, I really like to at least get the event portion figured out, because to me that really shapes the course. Like whatever the actual thing is that the user's expected to do. Like if I find right now that every event is issue closed, issue closed, issue closed, I think I could probably get more creative with what I'm trying to teach, unless the lesson is on how to close issues, right? That's my thinking. Okay. So let's see here. So the first step is going to be, hey, there's a linked issue, find it. And this way, this is great too, because we can also, I'm doing it again, clicking the wrong screen. We will be describing cross-linking. So describing course goals, really high level, and describing cross-links between issues and pull requests. So this way they can see it first and be like, oh, okay. Versus before, when they were creating a cross-link first, they hadn't seen it, which can be fine. But for my teaching style, I would prefer them see it, click it, they know what they're doing. Then when they create one, they know what's going on. So they close the linked issue. The instructions in step 2, but see, I would want these to post in the first issue, right? So I have to decide where these instructions are going to come to the learner. The first issue is opened along with a whole bunch of other nonsense. And it's like, hey, go ahead and close that issue that you find cross-linked. They read down, they find the cross-linked issue, they close it. So in the closed issue, relinks to original issue or a new issue. Let's say a new issue. Yeah. initial issue stays open. Normally I would close that issue because I, again, try to keep it light, try to get rid of the, try to get rid of any extraneous information, but that's kind of what we're teaching with this course. So in this case, I'm going to leave it open. New issue is opened, and that, like, with the instructions. And the instructions are, please find the related issue and cross-link with a short description. And that's when the user would go, they'd have to find and search somehow info about how to find things, like issues and pull requests. There's several ways to do that. Okay, so then they would link. So then the event is an issue comment, and then we would validate that it has some kind of comment reference. It really wants me to do this. Link there, that's fine. Okay. Step 3. Okay, so what was step 3 gonna be? So let's look at the other behaviors. I'm feeling pretty good about this right now. We'll see how it goes, but not bad for 30 minutes. Picked a course, content, picked a couple different steps. Nice. Okay, find something through crosslinks. They've already done that, so check. Chickaroni. Find, oh, here we go. So there's the crosslink, and then there's finding commits, and then there's like finding commit context. I think those are kind of different things. So, finding commits. That, let me think. I'm trying to think on if we want them to find the commit versus if we will give the commit to them and they will find information about it. Because finding a commit, like what would that look like? Like they would need to find it for some reason. Would they look for a commit that is, they want to look for a commit, so when would that happen in real life? They would look for a commit in real life if something broke, or sometimes I look for a commit if, for example, I'm looking at a document or some like FAQ stuff, all in Markdown, of course, because it's GitHub, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense. That's not what I thought that it said. What happened? Like, when did that change? Or even, who was the last person, maybe a more positive spin on that. This I've done recently as well. What is the, like I found a document on a topic that I was really interested in, and I'm looking for who's the expert on this topic at GitHub. So I find the document, but I want to see who actually created that document. Like, what are the most recent committers and the most recent commits, so I can understand, is this somebody I can reach out to or not? Is this their role? Is this a hobby? What's going on there? So let's go that route, because that is pretty positive. I see in chat, you can make 2 steps out of 1 if they find it and it's info. Sounds like it's part of the outcomes. Great point, Hector. Hello, I hope I say your name right. Atul. I'm pretty sure this will be recorded. This is actually my first YouTube live stream that I recall. I may have done one years ago, but I'm pretty sure it records automatically. So I'll let you know. But Hector, that's a good point. So 1 is finding it. Gosh, clicking on the wrong screen. So find a specific commit, and then step 4 is finding info and context around the commit. And then, so that can be like why it was made, when it was made, who approved it. We'll get there when we get there. I don't know if this happens to anybody else. Sometimes my brain, it's like too many things. I was trying to think of all the events for all of them. I'm going to focus on 1. So finding a specific commit. So I'm going to go back to here. You know what? Screw it. I don't care if it's underlined yellow. The information for next step, or instructions for next step, I'm going to say, talk about git blame. So I'm going to be like, this is what git blame is. You might need to blame someone, or like give credit, get attribute something to somebody, and ask the user to find an author of a specific commit. This can be broken down into finding an author of a commit in a pull request, or finding the author of a commit that's already merged. Let's go with already merged. that, so like specific commit on master. Okay. And then once they find it, what are they going to do? So if they find it, they are going to, so it's going back to like, I hate asking them to just comment everything, but if it is, I mean, if we're going to break it up so that the next step is to find the context, so maybe they could like find the pull request, find the author, you know, the author and comment there, then, okay. So this makes sense. So find the comment some part of the SHA, so the commit SHA, or the link, we'll figure that out, or something, in the issue. So I need to say, was this new open? So there was one, then there was a second one for for step 2. And once they commented, yes, so let's let the theme of all of these things, so the theme of the issue for step 2 and 1, right, because they're related. No, they're not related. The theme for step 2 and the comment, let's have those be, or the commit, have those be related. So the content, what's the word, concept of issue in step 2. So that way it makes sense that they comment it in the same issue. See, Aaron says, hi Aaron. Yes, YouTube will record up to 12 hours of the live stream. Cool. Awesome. All right. So then they find a specific commit and then they comment it. And so the event is issue comment. And then we would need to validate for the SHA or link or whatever we decide to ask for. We don't need to decide that right now. Okay, step 4. Then, so this is where they find some information and context. So maybe I want them to, so here I'm going to put the instruction bit here, just for, this is how I organize stuff, knowing how it's going to go into a config later. So after I validate the SHA, then I'm going to say, cool, can you give me, let's see, instructions for next step. Can you please give some context about the commit, or ping me in the pull request where it was created. And then, so we'll ask them to do that, and they will then find the pull request that included said commit from step 3 and @mention learning lab, I guess. We can figure that out. I don't remember if you can @mention learning lab or not, but we'll figure it out. Well, it'll be something like an @mention. We could also do another crosslink. Or we could do like adding a label, but I don't think that, I'm trying to think of other events. So like finding information and sharing information, bringing information, you know, up to visibility, then it does make sense that it's just a lot of comments, a lot of @mentions. There's not a lot of like, you know, a lot of the, like, it doesn't make sense to add it to a project board, right? It doesn't make sense to do a lot of these other things. It's not, you know, the other kind of big one that is used a lot in courses that probably won't apply so much to this course, at least it doesn't look like it right now, is a push event or a deployment event. So like if somebody makes a commit, then we can go in and look at that commit. We do that a lot, but right now it's really about interacting on GitHub. So you know what, it's gonna be fine. So they find the pull request that included said commit from step 3, mention learning lab. Okay, so then the event is again issue comment, and I think it's also going to be something like created for probably all of these. I just know that off the top of my head, or I think I know that off the top of my head, because I've done this a few times, but I could be wrong. And if you don't know what those things are off the top of your head, this is how you would find it. So I would find it as a mix of here, of the events, developer.github events. So there's issue.comment. And then I also go a lot to examples, usage examples. And the Learning Lab courses are all open source now. So going to, for example, Introduction to GitHub, I believe is one. This is a public open source repository. So any of the Learning Lab things that you see, this is all dark themed, just that's not a GitHub thing, that's a Brianna thing. Any of the Learning Lab courses you see that are GitHub owned on Learning Lab, you can go and look at the config.yaml file, which is what I'll be building out next, and see what are the events. So issues.assigned is how it's used here. So that's how you would do it. That's probably how I'll do it for a lot of other things. So this is finding the pull request where it was created. I want to also point out things like, so this is done, like author, that is done. Commit context, why was it made? That should be in the pull request. When was it made? That there. Who approved it and what tests are run? Those are pretty specialer things because I think those are another layer, right? Like, especially from an audit perspective, like, so from the perspective of like, who's the expert on this topic, who wrote this document, we would already have enough. But if it's from an auditing perspective, I want to see who approved it, what were the tests that were run, like, did it, it's not just one person that has done something. This makes me think of a story. I was at a customer and they were really worried about having more transparency in their development and just people being able to see what they worked on. They were also really nervous about letting other people work on their stuff. It was like, no, this is my code. Do not touch my code. Do not screw up my code. It came to light that the story, like 10 years ago at least, where somebody broke something and I don't know if it was the CTO or somebody like really high up like found out about it and was like, I'm gonna find who screwed up. And it instilled this huge sense of terror in everybody because everybody was afraid of getting fired. Everybody felt like it could have been them. Turns out, so somebody told the story trying to explain their culture. Somebody else in the room was like, that's not what happened. They were just searching for who screwed up so they could make sure that their current test coverage would now catch this bug that was not caught last time. So it was really just covering their butts for like here on out. It had really nothing to do with finding somebody to fire them. So I want to, in this course, include this kind of thought that finding history is not about, so here, and I'll do this here, so this is instruction. Finding history is not about who screwed up, but really about the bigger picture. Why were decisions made? Who was involved? Who requested it? Who approved it? There have been times literally where I will look at a history, like I'm seeing something like, oh, who did that? And then I look and it was literally me. Like I get blamed myself. I'm like, oh God. So, it's about why did this happen? And like what are the tests so that now you can see, oh, our tests would now catch, our tests have changed since then too. That kind of thing. So I want that to be a big portion of the conceptual element of this course. Okay, so find info and context. We need to do something with tests, which brings in some tricky pieces. Or maybe tests or approval. Because approval is easier, right? I think. I don't know that we've had oh, that's actually interesting. So far, Learning Lab courses that have been created, we can do whatever we want to, right? But the repositories are created from scratch every time. And to make this work, we would need to create a repository from scratch that has pull requests, no problem, that are also approved. And we want to build some kind of context that has more than just the bot. So the committers, we can do that. I'm going to put this at the, let's see. Merged PRs, pull requests with reviews from different people. It's going to be really, I don't know that we can do it with tests because it's such a fake little situation, right? If it were a real repository, we would have it would be alive for longer. We would actually have tests around for longer that would build and all this stuff. But since we're creating the repository from scratch, that means it'll already take longer because I'm going to have it be way more issues and pull requests. But for tests to be integrated, we would need to figure out how to integrate it with tests. We could do it with actions, but if the user doesn't have actions, it won't work. And then we'd have to wait for all those tests to actually run. Unless we did, so, okay. Use the checks API to make it look like tests passed or failed on certain commits. Okay, woohoo, got it. Okay, what that means, so I'm gonna go back to the docs home and take a look at these actions. So if I've focused a lot right now so far on what the events are that we're watching for the user to do, but this is, I'm thinking about how to set up the repository so that we can have the user do those things. These are the available actions. Open source and the Learning Lab components repository. I don't know if there is one to, let's see, create status. Ha! So create status, this is perfect because this we can do on a specific commit, I believe. Yes, on a specific SHA. And be like, that just needs to pass or fail. This is the same API that tests use, like Jenkins, Circle, whatever. This is the same API, but we can just do it like immediately. So that will give it the effect. It will not actually have like a test log to point to, which I don't love. Okay, that's okay. I will work through that later. So up here, I'm gonna say, use events action and link to that so I can find it later. For setting statuses in the PRs. Question, how will we replicate linking to real logs? Because that is the thing about this that we want to teach, right? We want it to be like a real history, you know, like you go look at it, like here, let's go look. We go look at atom or electron or whichever. In fact, let's do electron. We can see, you know, like latest commit, okay, it has an X, and then, so we can, with that check status event, we can, or status API event, we can set the red or green, but here, like if we look at details, this is gonna link to the full build output, which is what I want to emulate. I don't know if we would be able to emulate something this, like without doing it. But I'm gonna think on that. Okay. So where were we? So they find info and context. They find the pull request that included the commit, mention attlib or okay, and then they create a comment. And then the instructions for next step. So I want them to find something to do with tests or approval. Okay. In real life, that would look like finding log output or linking to a, you know, the last broken, ooh, that would make sense. Link to like the last broken commit on a branch. So the reason that this would be a new pull request. Let's see. Yeah, so here will be in a new pull request, or like in another pull request. It wouldn't necessarily need to be new. Another pull request. I want them to link or do something with the most recent failing commit, or maybe so let's say the most recent commit is failing. The most recent commit is failing. I want them to link to it. Why would I want them to link to it? Would want them to somehow reference that commit or fix it or do something to, what if they found the pull request Oh, how about this? Okay, so lots of pull requests opened. Find a pull request. Ooh, what if it's any pull request? Let them have some freedom. That is interesting. With a quote broken build, also known as a Reddit, like a failing status. And then they could do something like commit on that branch to do something that would fix it. That is what I would like to emulate. Emulate something like committing on that branch to fix it. That could look like, that's a little tricky because the actual tests or like the build is stuff that is like fake anyway. So I'm going to come back to that. But if y'all have any thoughts there like Hector, Aaron, Glenn, Atul, anybody else, let me know. Like, what are your thoughts? So this is I want them to find there's a bunch of pull requests. A couple have broken builds. They're not really broken builds, we can't do that, but they are really failed statuses. They could have different instructions, maybe in each PR. About what needs fixed. And user should commit based on those instructions. Might be too much. I might be asking for too much by having multiple options for them. Might just need to be one option. And then we validate their commit to see if it is what we asked for. So then here let's do a test here, approvals later. We validate their commit. The event is commit. I know it's not the real event. To see if it's what we asked for. Then I see Hector says one option. Yeah, that's probably better, probably simpler. Then we send a passing status. Set a passing status. Okay. So that we would need to figure out. It's not exactly right, like it's not exactly like a true test, which it would be way better, I think. But I think it's enough for right now. Approval is the next bit. So, approval. Okay, so what they did with the tests was they went and found one that was failing the test and then made a commit. That's kind of a lot of steps. What if that's too many steps? They found one that was broken. So the instructions, let me back up. So lots of pull requests open, find the pull request, the broken build, and then we could have the instructions. Okay, so I think what we need to do is this. Then assign themselves to that pull request. So trying to break it up so we can track them. So if they get lost, I don't want to tell them to do 50 things at once. I know it's not 50. I don't want to tell them to do too many things at once, because then if they get lost at any step, we can't bring them back. So here it's just like find the one with the broken build. That's already something new that we haven't taught. And then step 5, instructions are here. And what the event would be assigned themselves. And then, so then they would do the commit. And then step 6, step 6 is the commit. We validate it, we set a passing status. Instructions for the next one. Let's see. Also the instructions posted in the pull request once they assign themselves. And this one, going back, something where this last one, so finding info and context, this would be, I don't know where that will go yet. I'm gonna move on. Something to do with tests, they commit, and then the instructions for the next one, I want this to have to do with approval. maybe finding if something has been approved. Maybe it's referencing, so the commit they found at first was not the same commit as is the one that's breaking this pull request. Those are different things. Talking out loud here. Thinking out loud. I'm trying to think of a way that we can bring in the concept of who reviewed this commit back then and bring that into the story of what they're doing right now in terms of having to do with tests. Or having to do with this work on this passing build. Maybe if the content is the same, but I also don't want to lean too heavily on that and make them think too much about the content, because I don't really care. That's not what I'm trying to teach them. What I'm trying to teach them is about context of commits. Who approved it? Maybe even what approvals are necessary? I don't know. What do y'all think? This one has me a little stuck, a little stumped. In terms of why this was, how we can bring in approvals to this story having to do with tests. Because I think maybe it needs to go earlier, where they are finding a specific commit. Maybe the pull request, so they find the pull requests and include the commit, @mention learning lab. This might be the time to think about who approved it. So maybe the approval can be here. So if that person approved it, the instructions is we want them to find us, why were the decisions made? Maybe what we could have them do is in this comment, @mention the author and the reviewer, and ask for clarification. So we can have them post something, we can just check to see if they have actually @mentioned the reviewer and the author. We can, again, checking if they asked a question is kind of that's murky waters. Excuse me. We'll check if they, I think I need coffee. Check if they mentioned the author and reviewer. Reviewers could be. So this is really just to emphasize to them that history is still there. Cool. We know who did what. Okay, that makes sense to me. Then they assign themselves, so we're okay, great, you found it. Here's some context. Next, can you find this pull request with a broken build? Oh, maybe even the context is we need to improve this and are working on it, but the build is failing. Maybe they forget to link it directly, which is not good form, but it would force the user to search to find the pull request of the broken build in a way that is different than just clicking links, so I like that. And so then they were hey, find it and go assign yourself. And they're okay. And so they do it. They go assign themselves, and we're great, thanks. Here's the instructions on how to fix it. And they're okay, cool. We're gonna commit and do that. And we're good job, you did it. I think that's really good. It's not really good. I think it's a start. It's only 6 steps, which is less than I usually like to be around 8 or 9 for literally no reason. So maybe it's fine. But I think this is in a pretty good spot for right now. So I'm just gonna walk through this really quick, and then I'm probably gonna call it a day for today and try to come back maybe Friday. So step 0, so the before step. In fact, let's look at, I'm just gonna bring this back to the examples here on Learning Lab docs, the quick start on building courses. I just want to show kind of what how what I wrote today is gonna go into a config next time. So plan your course, step-by-step planning guide. I didn't look at that. I probably should have. I want to go to examples. Let's find some examples. Sample course outline, sample courses. So as you see here, so there's some metadata here, like what is the name of the course? That's important. You know, what's the tagline, the description? Where does it live? Because the course itself will be a repository, and there will also be a template repository with commits and branches and all that good stuff. So this is, to me, step 0. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go back to the introduction to GitHub one, because there's a little bit more here. So this is the metadata. I guess you go all the way down to here. This is also in a couple different languages, which is super cool. This before step. So this is, to me, like what I wrote out here is step 0. This is like setting the scene in terms of what are the GitHub actions. Things like longer history, so commits would be a part of the template repository. But making the pull requests, that would be before types. Those are the actions. And then the steps here, so we see number 1, number 2, they're numbered here, which is really nice. Make this a little bit bigger. This is similar to how I've tried to lay out the things here. So step 1, I would need to give this a title, right, a description. I'm not going to use translations for this right now. The event, issues closed. I would need to change the syntax so it's accurate, YAML. And then here I just have like instructions for step 2. So what that means is one of these actions would be posting those instructions somewhere. I would need to include a link, and then in these actions it would be like, yeah, the action would be, let's see, closed issue relinks to new issue. Okay, issue stays open, so I would close the issue, open the new issue with instructions. That would all happen as a reaction to them closing the first issue. And that's what we will go through next time, just doing this, kind of turning it into a config. And I'm going to try to use the course builder next time. All right. Thank you all for hanging out, all 4 of you, my favorites. This, as Aaron let us know, will be recorded. I believe I'm going to try to come back and do some more on Friday, probably the same time. Sorry, it's pretty early for you US folks. But yeah, let me know here or on Twitter at BriannaMarie132 if there's anything in particular that you want to see. Now I have to figure out how to stop the stream. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.